the majority of online harm to children is preventable.
It's actually trivial for anyone who knows what they're doing. They have two versions of TikTok. Salad to the Chinese children and opium to everyone else's child around the world in those two different versions of it. Stranger danger of today, though, means that they can go into a chat room. I spent 8 years in the evidence. Now I spend my time trying to make sure children don't become the evidence.
Dale, your cyber safety guide platform opens with a line I keep coming back to. You write, the majority of online harm to children is preventable. Not most of it, not some of it, the majority. That's a big claim from someone who spent 8 years sitting with the evidence of what happens when it isn't prevented. So I want to start there. For people listening who don't know your background, who are you and what qualifies you to make that claim?
Yeah, Boris. So I think that my claim there is based on the fact that I took a bit of an unnatural route into cyber. I was a young geek, basically, who liked to take things apart, put them back together again, and understand how they worked. I was always good at taking them apart, just not so good at putting them back together, unfortunately, which my parents didn't really like. But I think that from that sort of background, I always wanted to be a policeman was the thing that I wanted to do. So do something good for the world. It was my very young view on my career and how I wanted to be. But I ended up actually joining the Royal Air Force Police way back in the dark ages of 1997 when I was 18. And I joined as a policeman, and for most of my career just did normal policing duties. So it was breaking up fights, and going to thefts from the gym and stuff like that. So it was all very normal. And then because I think of my background, I'd always levitated towards the more technical side of things. And I was actually very lucky to end up, I say lucky, in some respects I was lucky, other respects, which you'll find out about, I wasn't. But I ended up doing the digital forensics and incident response within the RAF and also across the MOD's network, so the Ministry of Defence. So we basically did investigations into breaches of the network, but part of the job involved also having to do investigations into criminal web browsing. And those words probably don't impact most people until you mention CSAM, so child sexual abuse material. So that's sort of the output from those investigations was that I had to look at some pretty horrific imagery and stuff that I'd never even thought about before. As a young, naive man growing up, I'd heard of these things, but until you see them and see, almost look into the victim's eyes, that's when it hits that there's some really bad stuff on the internet. There's some really bad people out there doing really bad things. And most people don't think about it or don't like to think about it, because if you say the words child porn to someone, immediately they react in almost horror and step back. So if you can't even say the words to someone, then they don't want to think about it. But the problem is that they have to think about it, especially as parents, because that's why I say it's avoidable. Is if you have the conversation with a kid, you don't have to go into detail on anything, but you have to have the conversation, because you have to let them know of the risks that are out there rather than hide from it. Because when we grew up as older gentlemen, when we grew up, it was back in the day, it was stranger danger, right? And everyone could talk about stranger danger because it's a very simple subject. You don't get into cars with people you don't know. You don't take sweets off them. You don't go to look at the puppies in their van, right? It's a really easy conversation that teachers, parents, anyone could have with a kid, because you knew about it and you understood it. And these days we still have stranger danger, but it's stranger danger online. So it's technical as far as people can consider and think. They think that it's confusing, so they don't want to talk about it. So I think that it's a defense in depth strategy, the same as we have in cyber. It should be the same in protecting children. The first layer of defense is communication, letting the kid know what the risks are, but also letting them know that they can come to when it goes wrong or doesn't feel right. Because that's the thing, a kid these days can hide something from a parent like that. It's just easy. Even someone like me who works in cyber, I find out things that kids are doing, and my mind's blown because of the ingeniousness of it, so to speak. So I think that if you can communicate with them, let them know that when they feel something's going wrong, come to you and tell you, you're already sort of setting the foundations for when a technical control fails, because they will fail. Technical controls are only as good as, you know, the person who puts them in place and uses them. So if you've got that defense in depth in place, at least when one fails, something else can take up the slack and hopefully protect kids. So it's harder for the ultimate end goal of the predators to happen if you've got as many protections in place as possible. And that always, for me, starts with a safe place at home where they can come and chat to you about things.
I love that. And it's one consistent message that everyone I've had on this podcast has said as one of the number one things. So yes, wholeheartedly agree. Now, most people hear digital forensics response and they think corporate breaches, data recovery, you know, that kind of thing, if you like. But for you, the last 8 years as a RAF police in your career, that's not what it was. What did those 8 years actually look like?
Yeah, I think that the job was supposed to be, the primary job was supposed to be that, you know, investigating breaches and, you know, protecting the network against Russia, China, you know, and all the other big APTs. And that was sort of what I'd signed up for. Unfortunately, I think what wasn't explained beforehand and what we didn't find out until we all started there was that we would have to do that role. And there was nothing in place for us. There was no support in place. So basically, we did what most military men do. We pretended there wasn't a problem, and we said that we'd just look out for each other. You know, we'd know when something wasn't right and what have you, and we'd look after each other. The problem is when you're not told what to look out for and you're not told what these things will do to you, then how can you protect each other, you know, doing that job? And the problem was that for me personally, speaking for myself, is that I started to become a different person. I was always the happy-go-lucky, cheeky chappy. Was you read any of my assessments over the years of the previous 20 odd years, and that was me. I was the cheeky chappy and, you know, the center of attention, wanted to make everyone happy and laugh and stuff. And I very slowly became someone very different. And I actually, when I talk about it these days, I say that the old version of me died. And I mourned his death, basically. So I talk about myself in the third person when it comes to this, but that version of me died. But the version of me from before is the one that I wear on my face every day. So I have to wear a mask to get through most days because I don't want to affect other people around me. And my wife, I don't know how she's managed to last 22 years as my wife, but she has supported me throughout. She's seen me at my best and at my worst. And she's the only person that sees me without that mask because you can't keep it on 24 hours a day. It's just, for me, it's exhausting to be the happy person at work and what have you. So I think it's taken so much from us that I have to find ways to find positives within it. And I think that's where I suppose the positive of the horrificness is the fact that I've seen it firsthand. And I would never, you'll see if you've read my blog, you'll see that I don't talk about graphic details. Because I don't want to, I don't feel I need to, but I do touch on the subject quite a bit. And the fact is that I've seen it so that hopefully others won't have to. And one of the things that I've said before is that I spent 8 years in the evidence. Now I spend my time trying to make sure children don't become the evidence. And I think that's because I've literally looked into the eyes of the victims. You know, you almost see into their soul, and it's like you don't want parents to have to deal with that. You don't want an investigator to have to deal with that. I don't want a counselor or a therapist to have to be the one who deals with that child. And then it's the really bad butterfly effect. You know, that one action by a predator affects so many people. But over the 8 years, I mean, the last 2 years were basically I was off sick at home, didn't go out, didn't leave the house. I was eventually in a car with my wife, and we were driving home from work, and I had one of my road rage events, basically. And it all started from just someone brake checking me, you know, and I was trying to tell them that their brakes weren't working, and then they started shouting and what have you. And I immediately, the red mist, and drove upside them, started shouting at them and all this. And I'm not a violent person, but I'm a scary person when I get loud. So I actually then had to pull over after the fact. And it was actually in that moment that Colleen turned to me and said, I don't feel safe with you in the car. And I swear it was like being stabbed through the chest. And the very next day was the day that I went to the doctors and said, I need help. And that was probably the moment that everything changed, because in that moment, I didn't care about hiding weakness. I didn't care about anything else apart from my wife didn't feel safe with me. So that next day, they started the referrals. I went to the Department of Mental Health within the military. And I think it was a week later that a psychiatrist basically said to me, yeah, you've got CPTSD, but now we can do something about it. And since then, that was back in 2018. Since then, I've been on medication, which I'll probably be on for the rest of my life. I've had more therapy than is probably healthy for any one human being, but I could probably write a book on it now. But the fact is that one moment, recognizing that it isn't normal, what you're going through isn't okay, was probably a lifesaver for me. Colleen and Leffe, who passed away in December, I called my wife my rock, and I always called him my Pebble, because we got him when I was diagnosed, and he spent his life on my journey with me. So when Colleen was at work or not around, he was there. And I think that they have both been the reason that I've managed to get to where I am today and be able to do what I do today, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm grateful for you that you've got an amazing wife who's your rock, as you mentioned, and Leffe the dog. By the way, if anyone wants to see photos of Leffe, who has passed away, please go and check out the blog. Superstar little Frenchie. So, grateful to your lovely partner and Leffe there. All right. So you told me obviously now what that work was and what it cost you. Now, I want to actually use that knowledge though. A predator finds a child online. What does that look like in the early stages before anything criminal has happened, before any parent has noticed? Walk me through it.
So it's very much a relationship building exercise. And like I mentioned before, the old stranger danger was somebody had to snatch someone off the side of the road. Very dangerous for them as a predator, very dangerous, high risk of being caught. Stranger danger of today, though, means that they can go into a chat room, they can be on a game in voice chat or in text chat, they can be on one of the social media platforms, and it's as simple as, hey, how you doing? I'm Johnny, aged 15, from not too far away down the road, in a different town. I'm into such and such, this, that, and because they may already know some detail about the kid, and they'll start to build those relationships with them. They'll talk about the same things, sport, the game that they're playing. They'll start to build that trust, because there is no rush for them. They're not worried about being caught. They're not worried about being seen. They are literally on the other side of the screen, taking their time, making up their lies and building that trust to the point where they're just a friend, and that's what the kid sees. The kid sees their friend Johnny online that they can chat to, that they don't feel judged by, that they don't get bullied by, loves all the same things. And that is how that relationship initially will build out. Depending on the ultimate goal of the predator, they will get to a point where they'll make a decision on what their next steps are, whether it's for sextortion or whether it's for getting them in real life to meet. So that's how that initial bit builds up normally.
Now, I had a guest on the podcast who gave me a stat that it only takes 8 minutes to groom a child. 8 minutes. You've seen what grooming looks like from the forensic side. Does that number feel right to you?
I think in this day and age, yes, purely because AI has obviously infected and impacted all different aspects of people's daily lives, right? And that's no different from within the sexual predator world. They use it as a tool as much as we use it to, create imagery of nice things and help us to plan things and do stuff. We use it for normal things, but as with any tool that gets created for good, it can be used by evil. And the fact is that if a predator wants to, they can literally make themselves look, sound, and feel like an idol to this kid. So they could, this kid could think they're talking to their favorite pop star or what have you, or they can think they're talking to Johnny age 15, because on the screen in the old days we used to be able to make a phone call or see them in person and or see them on camera or whatever, and you would know. These days you can't do that, because literally they can be whoever they want to be on camera, on phone. So 8 minutes doesn't surprise me in the slightest. I think though most of them will take longer, just because they have different goals, as I say before. So it depends on what they want to get out of it. If it's a sextortion, then 8 minutes is probably well within the realms of it, because they want to get through them. They want to get the money, they want to move on, they want to get whatever it is they want to get out of it. Like the con, they are a bunch of, I won't say people, but animals who they literally use children as avatars. They use them as toys to be able to one-up each other in their little environment. So I think that the stat is very real. I think though that it depends on the different aspects of what they're trying to get as their end goal.
Yeah, and before we go down that AI rabbit hole, by the way, I was going to say, so if I put on the hat of a parent right now who's listening to this, and I've got a teenager, I'm going to say daughter, 14, she's plays like many of her friends online with her friends, and however she's been playing with some kid called Johnny at her school, and that they've been connecting, and she's showing me the profile pictures on the phone. In this day and age, I guess, can that be faked at that level, as you said, or all of what I just mentioned?
I could do that in, give me 5 to 10 minutes on a laptop, and I could do all of that. And if you want to spend some money on it, you can add the right voice. You can make it a video. You can make it do and say exactly what you needed to say. So yeah, it's simple. It's actually trivial for anyone who knows what they're doing. And even for people who don't know what they're doing, now we have apps that will do it for you. There's, Grok was a recent one where it was used to nudify imagery and stuff like that. So there are meant to be guardrails in place on all these things, but as with anything, guardrails can be removed and people can make money out of doing that. So you will find a Google search will show you how to do most of these things, and it's scary how easy it is.
Yeah, I had someone on recently, and she sent me a link, which was a award-winning document. I believe that was made late last year in the UK, where she interviewed. Well, not it was basically a video of 3 children, and they were all in different scenarios, and one of them was the sextortion, where the boy thought he was talking to a girl at school, and it got to the point where she would send images which were clearly fake, and they're using, as you said, these image models that are used for the bad, not for the good, because we know any image model that we use online, when I say that, like your Claude, your ChatGPT or whatever, they're not going to make naked versions of children. They will all not allow that, but other versions will. And got him to send one picture. That was it. One picture in a compromised position, and within minutes, bang, all these photos of him, which were not him, clearly, because it was a deep fake, and he got caught out, and he got asked for money for sextortion, that hence the term. And then there's a case again unfortunately using the technology you just mentioned, where one boy decided it would be funny if he started sending pictures of one of the girls in his classroom to all their mates in compromised positions, naked, not her at all. And then replying with, after, as she calls it, ruining my life, replies with, "Hey, it's just a joke. You need to learn to take a joke."
Yeah, that's that's where I think the problem comes back to no communication. But also there's a bigger problem here in the UK. I don't know about elsewhere, but in the UK, I tried a couple of times to get online child safety placed onto the national curriculum. And two Secretary of States for Education have both said, no, there's things in place, it's fine. The problem is they rely on what they call statutory guidance, which means that basically it's recommendations. They recommend what needs to be taught. And then in the schools, it's down to individual schools, how they teach it and what they teach. The problem you have there is that you might have one school that has a teacher who's maybe technically aware and can do that and can deliver a lesson plan that works, whereas the school down the road, very different, might not have that availability. So you have a postcode lottery when it comes to what level children are taught to when it comes to online safety. And the problem, or my philosophy, was to try and get it placed on the curriculum so that people who know what they're talking about can create and then curate that content for the delivery by teachers and people in schools. That obviously didn't work out, and the couple of petitions that I tried didn't work out. But it's one of the things I'm doing on the blog now is I'm setting up a schools hub, and basically the schools hub will be for designated safeguarding leads for teachers and stuff in schools to be able to go to download, presentations and escalation pathways, that sort of thing, so that they have a better idea of what to do. It's a drop in the ocean, it's not going to solve any problems, but at least for the people who get access to it, it will help them. And that's the problem with this whole non-communication with kids, is if you try and hide from it and hide from the problem and the risk, then that kid who eventually sends his picture and then in that moment realizes, I've made a really bad mistake here. If he doesn't feel he has a way out, then unfortunately in the past, kids have taken their own lives, because you will remember I barely remember as a kid, but the smallest things used to be the biggest things in the world. We look back now and we think of some of the things we used to panic about and lose sleep about, and we think, what were you thinking? Because in that moment, it is, your life is over, right? And a 5-minute conversation with your parents or with a friend or a trusted adult somewhere would have sorted you out, and you could have gone with your life. These days, that's much more difficult, because when someone would say something to you in the playground back there or make up a story about you, that's fine. Maybe 3 people would hear about it. These days, the internet doesn't turn off, so it follows you home and everyone talks about it and everyone online is there, and it becomes a really big issue, which shouldn't become a big issue. So yeah, I think that it's a problem that is systemic and very widespread.
Agreed. So speaking of the blame game, right? This is the most common scenario that we see. Okay. It's the loop where a parent blames the platform. The platform says to the parent, you need to be a better supervisor. The regulator says, we need more laws, So where does the responsibility actually sit in your eyes?
Is one of these things that I think is wasted energy, because you can only take responsibility for the things you have control over. So as a parent, I've always thought that the responsibility for you as a parent is to set your child up the best you can to deal with the problems that life will have. We've all got experience growing up. We've been there. We've done the growing up, right? So all we can do is pass on the very hard learned lessons that we learned as kids growing up to our kids. And I think that's what parents need to do. Parents just need to be parents. Parents shouldn't have to worry about safety controls in place on apps and all these other things, because they're not experts in that. The people who create the platforms are experts in that. So it should be the responsibility of a platform to make sure that they're providing a safe environment for its users. And I reached back to a post I did recently on ByteDance, who are the owners of TikTok. They were forced in China by the Chinese government to do exactly that. But instead of making the app safe for all children, they made the app safe for Chinese children in China. And they have 2 versions of TikTok. So it means that the TikTok version in China will only deliver educational content to children. The algorithm is specifically designed to enrich that child and enrich their lives. There's limits on how much time they can spend on the app. There's limits to the scroll of doom effect. They can't do that. There's 4-second pauses between it. And these are all things that common sense dictates is something that should be in place. But child safety doesn't make a profit. So that organization has two versions of it, and they're feeding, you know, salad to the Chinese children and opium to everyone else's child around the world in those two different versions of the app. So I feel that there's definitely a place where platforms, whether they want to take control and take responsibility or have to be forced to take control and responsibility, that's in their lane and it's very much their responsibility. And then the regulators and governments, they need to be, I don't want to live in a country where we're ruled the same way that China rules. You know, I don't want that. But I do want our government and the regulators to actually enforce what's already in place and just enforce common sense on these platform providers to protect the children who are on there. Children are not a product that should be abused and used to make money. They should be protected to enjoy using the platform. But that's where we get into the blame games and why platforms try to blame parents and why regulators don't do what they need to do. Politics and the tech bros, you know, who are very much in control of a lot of stuff, they get to make the decisions that we shouldn't be letting them make.
Yeah, they get a seat at the table. Funny that.
Very much.
I had a guest, Terence Camp, who said, "You're walking into a trap." And what he meant was engagement algorithms and what they do to behavior, basically. And when I read your stuff, the rabbit hole effect, platforms pushing kids into darker corners, it feels like the algorithms isn't just causing mental health harm, it's also building the exact conditions predators need: the isolation, the secret keeping. Is that how you see it, or am I overreaching?
I think that I've had my battle with the algorithm now for over a decade, and the algorithm doesn't like things that try to help protect kids. So content like mine very much doesn't go viral, right? There's just very little chance of that happening because the content that it wants to make viral is the stuff that you've just mentioned there. There's the stuff that makes a kid doom scroll. You know, it's doom scrolling is what makes the money. It's what keeps the kids there. But you know, there was a I read a recent one where someone had set up a profile on, I think it was Instagram, of 11-year-old girl, and I think it was within 8 minutes, 9 minutes, or something like that, where basically that kid started to, or the big profile started to get fed things about body dysmorphia, about, you know, self-harm, about, so it's one of these things of, if you're feeding your kid, you know, all this really bad information about feeling bad about themselves, about not looking, you know, the way the world seems to think they should look, or about feeling good about themselves, of course it's going to push them down into a world where they think that they're not worthwhile, they're not worthy of, you know, friendship and what have you. And the first thing a predator does is lynches onto that and thinks, well, I'm your friend, I like you, I think you look great, you know, you're perfect. And straight away, you know, you're going down that route of, oh, this person understands me, this person knows me, they know what I'm going through. And that relationship has started, and the bonding starts to happen. So the algorithm, as far as I'm concerned, is probably one of the most toxic parts of most social media platforms. It's not about making friends with people who are in your same peer group, who like the same things. It's pushing you into groups of people who are almost like a toxic effect on you and make you think the wrong things.
Because there was an article recently that was done on AI, and effectively what they're saying is that the AI, like, it mimics humans, and a lot of the time we blame it because it didn't do something right or give us the right answer, but it's actually trained effectively from the material it's being given from us, ironically, to please you, to give you what you want to hear, and therefore it can lead down that rabbit hole very, very quickly, again with that algorithm sitting behind it. This person likes this, I'm going to go down that rabbit hole, and unfortunately that rabbit hole goes down dark rabbit holes very quickly. And that was one of the other, in this video I mentioned before, one of the other ones was where a young teenager boy who had a chatbot, the ones that you know become your AI friend, that he literally fell in love with, and it got to the point where he understood him, no one else understood him, because, you know, you're a child, you haven't lived life, even though you think you have and you know everything, as we all know. anyone who's got kids or deals with kids every day. But, you know, at the end of the day, it led him down this rabbit hole to the point where he thought the only way I could be with you is if I kill myself, then we can be together. And like, that's just one example. There's many examples of this. And yeah, that, you know, going to your point of exactly, the AI is there to make you believe something and psychologically gets you by just agreeing and telling you what you want to hear, right?
Yep, 100%. And I think that's one of the things of people who use AI in their daily life and at work and stuff. We've realized that you need to give it those parameters, right? Because if it doesn't have the context and doesn't understand something, it will just fill that gap with what it thinks. But also, like you say, they are designed to please you as the user. So, you know, we've all been there where we've asked it a question of, you know, how many days of the week have the letter D in them or contain the word day in them, and it'll come back with 3 of those days, and it's like, well, what about Friday? Oh yes, you're completely right, sorry, how did I miss that? Of course it has that as well. What about Monday? Yeah, you're completely right. You know, it's basically it makes mistakes, and that's why any of these AIs now, if you look in the bottom somewhere, there'll be a thing that says AI can make mistakes, make sure you know, check it. That's their disclaimer, right? But it's all about context. If you don't give it those parameters, it's just probably going to hallucinate things and tell you exactly what it thinks you want to hear. So it's very much a pleasing friend, and one that people use for all sorts of nefarious means.
Yeah. Well, we've spoken about a lot of things tonight, that's for sure. And when it comes to advising parents, one of the first things you said, I think, is absolutely the most critical, which is for parents to build a safe space with their children. So even in the event, if something happens, whether I like it, whether I don't like it, whether I agree with it or not, that moment there, I'm your safe space. You talk to me and we work on this together, and I support you. I'm not here to judge you or tell you off. What other things can parents take away from this podcast that advice you can give them?
I think that one is 100% the biggest one. I think they need to take away the fear of it, and just know that it's not one big, you know, formal chat. It's lots of little chats. It's lots of little discussions. It's just saying how, you know, it's how was your day? How was your day at school? Or how was your day online? You know, what apps are you using at the minute? Tell me about them. You know, to educate me. You know, turn them into the teacher, so to speak, to teach you about what they're doing online and what they're doing. But that one point that you made there is the most important one of, I don't care if you think, you know, you've really messed up, you won't get in trouble. Come to me, tell me, and we can fix it together. But also just have discussions with other parents, you know, talk to other, you know, teachers, talk to other teachers. But there's lots of resources out there. My blog is just one of them that I have listed other resources on, but just make yourself aware of, I suppose, the risks, so that you can try and not even educate your kids, but just make them aware of those threats that are out there. I had a mother reach out to me actually yesterday on LinkedIn, replied on one of my posts, and she said that, you know, she has had these discussions with her kid, but she doesn't want to go into the detail of grooming and what have you. And I said, it's not about that. It's about just letting them know that you're there as a safety net. You're not there to punish them. You're there to protect them. And anything you do is to protect them and to try and help them get through a really difficult period in life, which is childhood. I'm so glad that I'm not a child these days, because it is a minefield. But just be open to everything really when it comes to that side of things. Don't fear technology, because there's people like us out there, me and you, who'll help educate them on those dangers. And it just needs to be a question. If you don't understand something, ask the question. There is no such thing as a stupid question, although I have asked many stupid questions in my life. I'm always glad I did, because the second you ask that question, there's probably about 4 or 5 other people in the room who wanted to ask the same question.
Yep, love that. You think it's so trivial, but all of a sudden everyone's like, yeah, that's what I wanted to ask that too. Nah, 100%. I love that. Now, Australia banned under 16s from social media in December. First in the world. Again, I give full credit to our government here in Australia to have the balls to stand up to the big tech companies. Now, How they did it, well, whether I agree or not is another matter. But you're clearly in the education camp, not the ban camp. Do you think it's the right call based on the fact that these are conversations that are happening in the UK, Europe, and many other countries around the world?
Yeah, I think that kudos to the Australian government for doing it, because a lot of governments around the world then took interest and heads up and looked to see, we can get data from this, we can find out if it works or not. So I think definitely kudos for them doing it. I don't think it's the panacea that people thought it was going to be, purely because kids, as I said earlier, are really smart, and they're like our dogs. They're more devious than they let on, right? They're definitely smarter than they want to let on. And when they want to get round something, they know how to use Google better than most adults do, or AI these days to get around things. So again, it comes back to technical controls are only as good as the enforcement behind them and the other layers around it. So without that basic education that I hark back to about having that on a curriculum where kids are given all the information, because they are smart, then they're not stupid. They take the information you give them, whether they use it or not is a decision they make, but at least you've given them that foundation and the reasons behind things. So I think that needs to be paired with technical controls. And I think the ban on phones, the UK government just announced they've made, or they are making law now, that they're banning them in schools. And my wife works in school as an SEN teaching assistant, and they're going to bring in Faraday bags. And I personally think that is the way it should be. I think whilst at school, a child doesn't need a phone. They need to be in school. They need to be learning. They need to be, interacting with other kids. They need to be building those social skills that will get them through life. So I think that is the way to do it. And maybe instead of banning phones, we look at Nokia 3310s for all under 16s, right? Back in the day when we were growing up, and I've probably still got one in a drawer somewhere that's still on its first charge, but you could play the snake game, right? That was all you could do on it, and you could ring your parents, because that's what the kids need. The kids and parents need an ability to connect to each other and communicate when the need arises. They don't need social media in school. They don't need any of this other stuff like gems and Clash of Clans or any of that rubbish. They need to be in school to learn and to associate with people. So I think bring back 3310s and give them to all under 16s, and that'll solve the problem.
On that note, I'd like to say thank you to today's sponsor, Nokia, for this. I loved Nokia. I dropped that phone and kicked it into so many things so many times, and just under the blow dryer, turned it on. And as you said, 30 years later, it's still on its first charge and it still works.
There's probably one power in a small village somewhere in on the Asian continent somewhere, in that I honestly don't remember ever having to charge one up when I had one. So yeah, these days you even look at a smartphone wrong and the screen breaks. So there's a lot to be said.
You're looking at me wrong, bro. I'm dying.
Exactly that.
Oh, mate, that's brilliant. You've described, a career that cost you enormously. You're running a platform on your own time, giving the money away alongside one of the toughest jobs in cybersecurity. What actually keeps you going?
I have a lot of hours of the day to fill, unfortunately, because as I've mentioned to you offline, I don't sleep like normal people do. And I don't even have insomnia. I used to have insomnia. I have somniphobia now. So when I say I don't sleep very much, the first thing people generally do is, have you tried this? Have you tried lavender? Have you tried it? And I'm like, yeah, I don't actually want to sleep. And they're like, what do you mean? It's like, for me, I have a fear of sleep. I lose control when I get into obviously deep REM sleep. So I tend to nap like a cat, as we've mentioned before, even though I don't trust cats. I am basically a cat, and that means I have a lot of hours to fill. And sometimes my long-suffering wife, who does sleep and does like sleep, I don't like, I like to give her as normal a life as possible. So I will go to bed. So I know I won't sleep, but I will go to bed. And there's certain things I can't do in bed while she's sleeping. I can't record a video or stuff like that, but I can write. So I do a lot of my blogging and writing and stuff when I'm in bed. I can even do designs for the website in my bed on my phone. So, you know, I do a lot when I'm supposed to be sleeping. And that's sort of what keeps me grounded, keeps me solid, is the fact that I, in my mind, I can't do the investigation side of things anymore. I can't do that side of the job to protect children. But what I can do is use that experience to put the information out there. If people take the information, great. If they don't, then, you know, that's okay too. But at least it's there. And I think that for me, that helps me to get through tougher times, because I class the PTSD as that massive cloud that follows me around. But I try to attach as many silver linings to it as possible. I know it's cliche, but I do try to create as many positives from that as possible. So for me, the last month or so, I've been doing a lot of development on the website and creating the hubs. And, you know, there's the Parents Hub, which I think is becoming a really great resource for them, because it's got the app checker on there. It's got guides for all of the sort of the common platforms at the minute. One of my proudest additions on there at the minute is the parental control setup wizard, because I think that's a problem that a lot of parents have, is they don't understand how to do these settings in place, right? So that is one that it asks four basic questions, and it'll give them the full rundown of how to do set those controls up. But I'm not going to stop there, you know, because I think that I do get feedback from people, not as much as I'd like, because I think it's the thing that fuels us. It's because, as you say, that I don't do this for money, and my job pays me well enough that I don't need to worry about that side of things, thankfully. So all of the proceeds go to NSPCC, who fund Childline, which is, for me, they are the real heroes, because they're the ones who have that interaction with kids, and they're the ones who are there for those kids when they really need them, which is how I see what I do, is that I'm there for the parents when they really need someone. So these are the things that sort of help me to get through the day. Obviously Colleen as well, she puts up with a lot. She's a basic angel, and she's the one that should get all the awards, and she should get all the extra money and stuff, but I feel like I should probably give it to charity rather than her. She gets enough of my money.
She made her choice, mate.
Yeah.
What's that saying? You made your bed, you lie in it, and
yeah, although my saying's better: happy wife, happy life, and that's worked out so far.
Brilliant. I love that. All right, one last thing from me then. It's a hypothetical.
Okay.
I'm going to let you rewrite one rule, one law, one industrial standard, one cultural norm about how we protect children online, or how we protect people who do that work. What rule are you rewriting, and what does the new version say?
Wow, that's a big one. I think if I was going to rewrite a law, it would be the one about the accountability of platforms or anyone who provides a service that children use. I think, in the same way that TikTok did with their app, I think that that's exactly what should happen when it comes to enforcing anything that children use. There needs to be baked in safety and security from the very beginning of the development of any of these apps or platforms. And I think that for me is an is a red line. I think that if there's any danger to a child on an app or on the platform or on the internet, it needs to be wiped out, eradicated, just not exist, because there's no ethical or business reason that should allow the danger of a child to make profit. And that's effectively the world we live in at the minute. Is they make business decisions when they should be making, safety decisions. So anyone that does that, get them in jail, or as I would do, put them all on an island. I don't want to make that Australia island thing, but basically, I think they should all be put on an island somewhere, and they should live together and then worry about themselves. But Colleen tells me that won't get me elected, so I've probably got to go down the route of the legal side of things and put them in prison.
The English people did that the first time, and we are here in Australia. So how did that work out for you, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think we did it the wrong way. I think we should have sent ourselves to Australia and left the rest of them here. But I wasn't around at the time, thankfully.
Yes. I want to say thank you. I want to say thank you for everything you do. Considering everything you've been through, I will give full credit to your amazing wife and your lovely dog who's passed away, Leffe. And we look forward to, who knows, maybe seeing another one soon. That helps you to do what you do, to educate people, to educate parents on how they should be approaching this situation. And, you know, staying up, not being able to sleep, that's a big thing. And the fact that you trooper on and still do what you do to protect kids is an amazing thing. So thank you so much.
No, mate, I want to thank you for what you're doing to make sure that you try and help amplify the messages that me and the other people you've had on are trying to put out there. So it means a lot that there's people around like you who'll try to support us.
Thank you so much.